What if one tax could freeze an entire trade relationship? What if $2 billion in digital levies sparked a tariff war that could shatter the economic link between two of the most integrated economies on Earth? That's exactly where we are now. On June 27, President Donald Trump abruptly halted all trade negotiations with Canada, blasting Ottawa's new digital services tax, calling it a discriminatory, egregious measure targeting American tech giants. In his signature style, Trump didn't mince words. He declared an immediate end to all discussions with Canada and gave a 7-day warning: retaliatory tariffs are coming. So how did we get here, and more importantly, where is this headed? For decades, the US and Canada have built one of the world's closest economic partnerships. But that trust is now being tested by a 3% tax. A tax Canada argues is about fairness. A tax the US calls an attack. At the center of the storm are the world's digital powerhouses, Amazon, Google, Meta. Ottawa says these tech giants profit from Canadian users, content, and data without paying their fair share of taxes. So the government, continuing a policy initiated under Trudeau, is enacting a digital services tax. But here's the kicker: it's retroactive. Not only will the tax apply moving forward, but it'll also apply to revenues dating back years. For Washington, that was a red line. The US response was swift. Speaking with CNBC's Morgan Brennan, US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessant confirmed what many feared: the White House believes Canada's DST discriminates against US companies. He called it patently unfair, stressing that while other countries like France, Italy, and the UK have introduced similar taxes, none had made them retroactive. According to Bessant, the $2 billion Canada expects to collect is effectively a backdoor punishment against American firms. So what's next? Bessant hinted that the administration is considering a Section 301 investigation, a formal probe often used to justify targeted tariffs. This mechanism, which Trump used extensively during his first term, could be reactivated to strike back at Canada's economy. But here's where it gets even more intense. Bessant explained that while Trump could invoke emergency tariffs under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, the Section 301 route offers more legal durability. Translation: these tariffs wouldn't just be symbolic, they could be long-lasting. Asked whether the US would go broad or focus on key Canadian sectors, Bessant replied it would be targeted. What sectors? Most likely those already under pressure: Canadian steel, aluminum, agriculture, and possibly even tech hardware. The goal? Make the tax hurt more than it earns. Now let's turn the lens north. Canada, under Prime Minister Mark Carney, hasn't backed down. In an interview with CBC's David Common, Foreign Minister Anita, Anand doubled down on Canada's position. She described the negotiations as complex, stressed that Canada won't conduct them in public, and highlighted the DST as consistent with international trends. When asked if Canada would pause or scrap the tax to save trade talks, she deflected, saying Minister Dominic LeBlanc is leading the file and will make decisions that serve Canadian interests. It was a clear signal: no public concessions, at least not yet. Anand also pointed to global precedent. Look at Italy, the UK, France, she said. This isn't new. She was careful to frame the DST as part of a broader economic strategy, not a reactionary move. And in case there was any doubt, she made sure to mention the painful impact of Trump's earlier 50% tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, calling them unjustified. This is more than just tech tax politics, it's a broader battle over sovereignty, fairness, and leverage. But why is this moment different from past flare-ups? One word: diversification. Anand emphasized that Canada is actively reducing its economic dependence on the United States. From signing a defense and security agreement with the EU to leaning more into trade relationships through CETA, CPTPP, and other global frameworks, Ottawa is quietly building a Plan B. She even reminded viewers that Canada is the only G7 country with trade deals in place with every other G7 member. In other words, Canada has options, and it's starting to use them. There's also a major shift in Canada's defense posture happening alongside these economic tensions. In the same interview, Anand confirmed that Canada will boost its defense spending to 2% of GDP immediately, and to a staggering 5% by 2035. That's up to $150 billion per year. Why does this matter in a trade war? Because a country that spends more on defense especially infrastructure like ports, airports, and critical supply chain assets, also increases its economic autonomy and bargaining power. Canada is preparing to play hardball not only at the negotiating table, but on the geopolitical stage. Half of that additional 3% spending, Anand explained, will go into core military capabilities, ships, jets, Arctic patrols. The other half, infrastructure that also benefits the domestic economy. Think of it as strategic nation building in response to economic and political pressure from the South. Anand acknowledged the trade-offs. Yes, increased defense spending will compete with programs like the Canada Child Benefit, $10 a day childcare, and pensions. But the message is clear: in this era of economic warfare, you must invest in national resilience. Meanwhile, US markets are nervous. The spectre of more tariffs against Canadian imports, especially on top of already rising inflation and tight monetary policy, could strain American businesses too. Many US manufacturers rely on Canadian components. A 301 tariff round would likely raise input costs and trigger lobbying from domestic industries that depend on Canadian goods. The White House might be posturing for leverage, but supply chains don't lie, they are already under stress. The broader global community is watching this unfold with caution. Countries like France and Italy, who also have DSDs, are wary that Trump's retaliation against Canada could set a precedent. If the US punishes allies for implementing digital taxes, what does that say about future trade alignment in the tech age? Are we looking at a breakdown in OECD-led digital tax negotiations? Or is this just a temporary tactical play in an increasingly transactional world? Back in Ottawa, the challenge is whether to stay the course or concede for the sake of economic peace. With tech giants like Google, Meta, and Amazon now caught in the middle of this geopolitical chess match, the fallout could ripple far beyond North America. Will other countries stand with Canada, or stay silent to protect their own trade interests? Will US companies fight back against their own government's approach, fearing global backlash or higher costs? And perhaps the most pressing question of all, if this rift deepens, what happens to the USMCA, the very framework meant to safeguard North American integration? Are we watching the slow unraveling of what was once called the most successful trade bloc in the world? These next 7 days will be critical. Trump has set a countdown. Canada is holding firm. And the digital services tax is now more than just a policy, it's a litmus test for the future of US-Canada trade, tech regulation, and economic diplomacy. What do you think? Should Canada stand firm on taxing digital giants, or should they pull back to protect the broader trade relationship? Is Trump's retaliation a defense of US interests, or an overreach that risks long-term damage? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this video insightful, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive. Your support helps us bring you smart, global analysis that cuts through the noise. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned, because this story is far from over.